there, students, and welcome back to another video from your favorite English school, which happens to be English Solutions for Business and Life. This is Emmanuel Cruz, and we'll be talking about Unit 2, like I mentioned, for your pre-intermediate book, Global English. And this time around, we'll be covering the grammar of that unit. So let's begin. And today we will go over the following. We'll be going over countable and uncountable nouns. You probably have heard from them. Things that we can count and things that we can't count, as well as quantifiers. Quantifiers. So quantifiers are expressions that help us measure or tell the amount of something. And then after that, we're going to have another one, which happens to be the infinitive form of the verbs. And some uses we can have when we have the infinitive form of the verb. So let's begin. So here we have some notes about countable nouns and uncountable nouns. About the countable nouns, we have that they can be counted in units. Yes. We can use the plural form by just adding the S. Most of them use the S at the end, for example, cars, tables, phones, etc. And we have other irregular plurals, such as, say, fish, what else, sheep, etc., etc. We just mentioned already that they can be plural, yes. And normally they seem to be easy to count. I mean, we just put the S whenever we use the plural form. But this is just an opinion. Now, uncountable nouns, on the other way, we can count them through a container. Yes, we can use bottle, glass, a bowl. For example, a glass of milk. Milk is an uncountable noun. They don't have a plural form. And in some cases they do, but sometimes it is either incorrect or it is an exception. Yes. Another comment about uncountable nouns is they can be tricky. They can be, if you don't pay attention enough, they can be tricky, and by this I mean sometimes they are not the same as they are in Spanish. So please be aware of this. Let's see. Let's review a little bit about countable and uncountable nouns. Now, about countable and uncountable nouns, well, I already mentioned units. Yes, things that are big enough to be able to count them, and whereas uncountable are normally liquids or materials. Yes, most of them, not all of them. We also count about the whole items. By this I mean, for example, a cake. We're talking about a cake or a piece of cake. That's a tricky one because if we say two cakes, we're talking about two complete cakes. But if I say two slices of cake, we're talking about one specific cake. All right. And one other thing that I already mentioned before, there are exceptions. These exceptions you have to learn and memorize. And through practice, you will get them just right. Okay, now let's move on to quantifiers. Now, quantifiers help us identify count and not count nouns. So we have quantifiers that apply for both countable and uncountable nouns, and we have specific quantifiers for countable and specific quantifiers for uncountable. Okay, and well, like I just mentioned, some work for both types. One of these examples of these would be some. Some can be used for both countable and uncountable nouns. Let's continue. Here are the quantifiers for countable and uncountable nouns. So some works for both. Yes, you can use some people, which is a countable noun, or some milk, which is an uncountable noun. Another one that works for both is a lot of, which for example, we have a lot of sugar, uncountable noun, or a lot of iPods. Countable noun. Okay, now we have some that are specific for each. For example, for count, we have a few, we have many, and we have few. Now, the difference between a few and few, that a few is a small quantity. Yes, for example, I have a few, I have a few, well, let me see, what can we talk about? We have a few DVDs in my shelf, yes, but if I have few dollars in my account. So the difference between a few and a few is that a few is a small quantity. One more time, I'm repeating myself, I'm sorry. And few is not enough, not sufficient. Not enough. Yes, I'm stating that the quantity that I have is not sufficient. Okay, or not good enough, so to speak. Let me erase that. The same happens with a little and little. Same story, but for uncountable nouns. A little is a small quantity, whereas little is not sufficient. For example, we have I don't know. There's little milk in the fridge, so we need to buy more because the amount is not sufficient. And for large quantities we have many for countable nouns and much for uncountable nouns. However, I need to mention that much is only for negative sentences and for making questions. I will try to give you an example later on so that you can see how we use much. Now, we have some examples here. Number one, I got little money for the trip. I need to save more. So it means, once more again, when we use little for uncountable nouns, little money is uncountable. Here I'm stating that I don't have sufficient money for this purpose, the trip. So I need to save more. I need to get more money before I can go to that trip. Now the next one, how many cars do you have? How many cars do you have? Here I'm asking for the quantity of cars I possess or you possess. In the third one, there isn't much milk left. Remember I told you about using much for negative? Yes, so we use here in a negative sentence, there isn't much milk left. If I wanted to say this in affirmative, I would have to say there is a lot of milk left. Yes, let's say that we erase that, we remove the negative, and we would have to say a lot of. Yes, and the result will be there is a lot of milk left. We cannot say there is much milk left. That is not correct. So make sure you make a note there. Now the next one, some cars are parked outside. Some cars are parked outside. So here's our quantifier, some, and we're talking about a countable noun, which is cars, and we're saying that they are out there in the parking lot parked. Now the next one, which would be the infinitive form. We have some notes up for it. We use it to express purpose, yes, why we are doing something. We can also use it for like the because expression. They used after its plus adjective. Example, it's difficult to go. It's difficult to buy, it's difficult to play, etc. So remember this expression, it's plus adjective. And it requires some practice and memorization. It's important not to translate. Many of the times, this specific expression or structure cannot be translated, or if we translate it, sometimes it doesn't sound good or correct in Spanish. So it's a very good idea not to change it from English to Spanish, literally at least. Okay, we have some examples here. Example number one, I need to study to pass the exam. Yes, so in this time we're going to hear to pass. Yes, so in this case, the purpose of me studying is because I want to complete this objective. I want to fulfill this objective that I have, which is pass the exam. In example number two, Actually, it should be it'll be impossible to get tickets the day of the concert. Yes, remember that expression? It plus the verb to be plus an adjective. Yes. So I'm stating here that it's not possible to get tickets the day of the. It will not be possible to get the tickets the day of the concert. You have to buy them before. And the next one, it's important to stay focused during any competition. Yes. So I'm saying here we have the expression again. It's important. We have the expression it's and an adjective. It's important, and we have the infinitive right away. So in order to do good on this competition, it's important to stay focused. I'm also mentioning that the purpose of staying focused is because we are probably going to win or do a good job. That's why it's important. Okay. All right. So one tip before we go and recap. Input outside school may be more important than and effective than the class itself. So what is input? Input is all information that you receive from the outside world. In this case, we can talk about news, we can talk people talking, or I'm talking about the conversations you may have in English, of course, outside of this outside of school. We got everything we listen to, everything we read, everything we say. So sometimes it's more important. Remember that school itself is just to give you a guide, to tell you this is correct, this is incorrect, you should do this, you should say this. But the real practice and the real way you're going to learn the English language is by every input that you receive outside in the real world. Okay, so let's recap a little bit on what we did. We did Unit 2 today for a global English book for you, the pre-intermediate student, when we looked at the grammar of the unit. We talked about countable nouns and uncountable nouns, quantifiers, and the infinitive form of the verb for a couple of objectives. Countables can be counted in units, they can be plural, whereas uncountable, they don't have a plural form. We use a container in order to count them, and well, they're tricky, and normally countable are easy. I kind of repeated myself there. Quantifiers, they help us count and not count. Sorry, they help us identify whether we're talking about a countable noun or a not countable noun. Some of them work for both types, which are some and a lot of. They work for countable and uncountable. A few is for countable, a little is for uncountable, many is for countable, and much is for uncountable, but don't forget that we use it for negative and questions only. Few and a little are for both countable. Few is for count and little is for uncount, and they mean not enough, not sufficient. We saw some examples. Now the infinitive, we use it for a purpose most of the time, and we can also use it with the expression it's plus an adjective. But not necessarily it's, it can be it will be. We can use it for it was, present, past, future, and most tenses we can use it plus the verb to be plus adjective. And we had some examples there. Well, don't forget this tip. This is really important to remember. Alright, so well, thank you very much for watching. My name is Emmanuel Cruz, and you can get in touch with me through the director of the school. I normally don't teach a class there, but if you ever meet, I hope that I get to see you, and if you have any questions or recommendations about these videos, please let me know. Well, that was it for today. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.